me, your host, Sophia. And today, my guest is Sharlene Styles. Charlene is a holistic nutritionist who is also an advocate for midlife women. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you for the invitation. Nice to be here.
So, tell us a little bit more about you and your journey to getting to where you are now, because yeah, they don't know the backstory. So I'm gonna let you tell the
Right.
backstory so
Right.
we can get to know you a little better.
All right. I'm going to take the express route in this story. But the story really started when I was a financial advisor for much of my life and living very imbalanced and unhealthy, if anyone can relate to this, in go mode, stress mode, building a career in a very corporate world dominated by men. Not that not that the men were making it the issue, it was the actual industry and the way that I was going about living a life in the corporate world was a big catalyst for my own imbalances and my own health issues.
Mm.
So during the time, I had some issues going on that made me explore different options, and no conventional method was able to clear things up for me. So I was always a person into natural health, and that just kind of opened up Pandora's box. And at the time, I knew that I needed to get my nutrition under wraps. But when I started looking at, like, what does that mean? What is actually under wraps and what is healthy? Everything was so conflicting, so and confusing, and it still is today.
Yeah.
And perhaps even more so today than it was back in the day when this my journey started. So I thought, I'm just going to go to an unbiased source and learn about nutrition and how to support my body and my health from an unbiased source that has nothing to pitch me or sell me. And I didn't know any other way than to go to a nutrition school. So I did that while I was working full time. I drove to Toronto and part time and started studying nutrition. So that's really what kind of opened up Pandora's box for me. And once I got there, my mind was like literally blown wide open. I was like, oh my God, here I am, knowing all kinds of things about profit and losses and spreadsheets and numbers and wealth, but I didn't know how my body worked. So I was like, oh my God, why doesn't anyone teach us this? Like the most important asset that we have for our entire life, like it doesn't come with a owner's manual. And you know, what I learned maybe was just passed down from generations before me. So whether it was accurate or not, and where do we actually get this information from? It doesn't come from our education system. It certainly doesn't come from our medical field. It comes passed down to us from our parents or caregivers or something like that. And that is really subjective and also perhaps inaccurate.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of opened the door, and from there, I studied, for funsies, I added in taking a yoga teacher training course at the same time while I was working full-time as a financial advisor, driving part-time, to study nutrition, and then I started studying, yoga in a way to just learn more about it. It just was, this whole organic evolution, and it was really yoga that was the catalyst for me to learn about myself. I thought I was gonna be learning about yoga, I really was learning about myself,
Mm.
and that was the catalyst for me to step out of my career. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but because I had some space now and I left my career, it opened up the time for me to go back to nutrition school. And then one thing just kind of led to another. It was never meant to be a career, it was never planned. It just happened organically. And once I had this information, people started asking me questions, and it just kind of grew one step in front of the other. And I practiced general nutrition for a number of years and also a yoga teacher, meditation teacher. Um, but then perimenopause hit for me. And everything I learned in nutrition school was like blown out the window. Nothing seemed to work. Nothing made sense. And I was like, what is happening here? So that catalyst, my own journey into perimenopause, really not allowed me, it kind of humbled me, first of all. And I don't want to say forced, but it led me to understand and want to know more about women's hormones, particularly
Mm.
metabolism, and most generally female hormones, because that's what I was dealing with. And then That introduction kind of blew my mind, kind of like what nutrition school did. I was like, wow, how did I miss all of this? And until you actually live it, you have a different type of invested type of interest in it. So my work today is predominantly with metabolic hormone and weight issues. Most predominantly, I deal with midlife women. Not to say, I mean, I have clients that are in their 20s, I have clients that are in their 80s, I have male clients, but most predominantly, midlife women is my who I help the most. Does that answer the question? I
Well,
mean,
it
it
really
was kind of
does.
long, but shortened
No, it
version.
really does because it's just interesting sometimes when you look at the evolution of things that it's experience or lack thereof that drives you somewhere else. And then the fact that you were studying, basically food is medicine, because as a nutritionist, you learn how different foods affect your body, but then you hit
Mhm.
this thing, feels like this wall called perimenopause. And some people don't even know that they're in it. You just know
Totally,
that
totally.
something
Yeah.
has changed because the doctors don't talk about it.
Mhm.
Even my female doctor never spoke to me about it.
Yeah.
So I just knew that I didn't feel right. And I was like, hey, this is what's going on. And it's like, oh,
Mhm.
yeah, that's normal. Okay, we'll do a couple of tests. Okay, your tests are normal. It's like, cool. I don't feel normal,
Right.
you
It
know?
it
So
totally doesn't feel normal. Mhm.
So it's good to know that you're out there and advocating for women who are going through this period in life because, yeah, now there's a whole lot more information. Now there are a lot more people talking about it, but sometimes, sometimes less is more because now
Yeah.
there's so many choices and a lot of people are saying the same thing, which is good because there's a through line. And
Right.
then
Yeah.
you
It
have
must be true if a whole
you
bunch of people
have
are saying
people off over to the left, you have people to the right, and then you
Mhm.
have men jumping in the mix, you know?
Mhm.
And
Yeah, very
and it's
true.
like, "Okay, dude, cool, because you probably have good information, but you haven't experienced this." So,
Mhm.
it's good that you can talk about it, but at the same time, you don't know what it feels like. And no, you don't have to know exactly what it feels like to be able to help somebody, because that's like somebody saying, well, you never had kids, so you can't help somebody who has kids. Not true.
Right.
Or you've never done this. It's like I could say to somebody, well, you've never skydived, so you can't coach me on anything related to taking a risk, you know?
Right, right.
So while that is not necessarily true, it's also good to have people in the spectrum that are experiencing or have experienced what you're going through, because then there's a different level of
Mhm.
understanding than not.
Yeah, and if I just may add, I think from my perspective, there was probably a lot more experimentation as well, like looking at different options and trying different things because it was my lived experience, right? So trying to find the solution that worked for me, and then once I figured that out, um, being able to kind of share, different options and alternatives that may work for different people.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think we also have to realize that it's not a one size fits all because
Mhm.
everybody's body is going to react differently and everybody's not at the same point in time just because they're at the same age in time.
Yeah,
So there are a
exactly.
lot of different factors. And I know like working with, because I work predominantly with single professional women who are over 40. So that comes with its own thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
And but some of the conversation does revolve around perimenopause and menopause and postmenopause because
Mhm.
again, lived experience. So it's something that you can relate to because sometimes, going through all of this, there could be a loss of confidence and you don't even realize why, but it could
Yeah,
just be, well, and I hate to say just because it's a huge thing, but it could be hormonal,
yeah,
and if you're able to help your hormones do what they really need to do, then perhaps. your mood regulates, your nervous system regulates, and
Yeah.
you're able to function better.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, it currently, like, right now in our environment, more and more people are having these conversations, and, as women, we're more open and trying to speak to our younger selves and let, generations before us know what may be coming. But before, it seemed like and so many of the people that I've worked with and talked to, are just kind of resolved to this is just the way that it probably is because I'm getting older. This is just part of aging. Or, my metabolism is slow. Or things have changed with age and that's what affects my metabolism and my hormones and this is just part of life. So we kind of adapt and as humans we're really good at adapting, which is beautiful. But it also can make us complacent to think, "Oh, this is just the way things are." Right? And, to get stuck in that loop of if you've been there, if you've been in this, perimenopause kind of, um, slump, I will call it, where you're not feeling like yourself, when you're thinking like something isn't just quite right, or, you're thinking you may be going crazy, whatever. I mean, there's so many variables, and, most of the time it's, you know, brain fog.
Yeah.
Most people are feeling foggy, fluffy, like carrying around extra weight, and it just kind of slows them down. So, um, anyone listening to this that may be experiencing it and not quite feeling themselves, I just want to offer some hope that it doesn't have to be the way that it is. There are things we can do. Maybe we'll talk about some of them today. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, it's funny because the way the things that you just said, foggy, fluffy, and
Yeah.
them. So I just thought about the 3 apps. Okay, so if you're feeling foggy, you're
Yeah.
feeling fluffy,
Yeah.
you're just like, "Fuck it."
Yes! The 3 apps. Yeah. That's exactly the feeling. Because it kind of feels like for most people that I work with, myself included, like, you try all the things, right? So you do get to the point of you tried so many things and you're so committed to doing something, and then there is this point of defeat where you say, "Fuck it. Can't. Can't do it. Nothing's working. Forget it. What's the point?"
Right.
Totally. Yeah.
And that's a hard place to get stuck in because
Yes.
I mean, this also is a point in life when a lot of people well, okay, let me say a lot of women start to reevaluate what's important.
Mm. Yeah.
They start to value peace more.
Yeah.
So a lot of women in this time of life start giving less fucks, really,
Yeah.
to anything in life.
Which is so beautiful. It's such a beautiful time. And this is where, I mean, I see this all the time where women really truly step into their power. They say what they mean. There's no messing around. There's no beating around the bush anymore. Like, yeah, there's something very, yeah, magical and powerful about a woman that is like, I am here.
Right. Because I talk about slaying the good girl and good girl syndrome. And one of the things
Mm,
is, really just being a good girl and not necessarily saying what you mean and people pleasing and trying to be the best and trying to be
nice.
nice and
Not a bitch. Yeah.
perfectionist and all of that. And I do say that I'm a recovering perfectionist because it still shows up
Me
every now
too.
and then, but I
Totally.
get to call it
Totally
out.
guilty.
I get to call it out. It's like, wait,
Yeah.
you're doing the thing. Step back and let's slay that.
Yeah, I love that. I love it.
um,
Slay it.
but yeah, it is a beautiful time of power to really
Mhm.
step into it. The and and one of the ways to really step into it is recognizing what's happening
Yeah,
and then making a conscious choice to, make that line in the sand and say, you know what, this isn't working for me anymore. And so you get
yeah.
to step over that line in the sand. And then once you step over it, that's a choice. And then you start making different choices. So,
Mhm.
with what you do, I think with the nutrition part, it really is about making different choices and experimenting. with what works with your body.
Yeah, there's a couple of things too that I would love to add to that. So yes, we're all, unique in terms of our, biological needs, bio-individuality. So truly finding something that does work for you is super important. And it's so interesting. It's the wrong roads that lead us to the right roads, right? So whether we look at this from even the invention of whatever, the light bulb or the airplane, right? All the failed attempts, all the things that were tried and learned from lead us to the right answer. And same with our own health. I liken it to almost dating too, right? All the wrong guys or wrong people lead you to the right one, right? So you know what you don't want. So part of that is sadly us experimenting to see what does and doesn't work, right? And to keep coming back. And when I have new clients working with me or that we're talking about or exploring working together, it's one of the things that I often congratulate the hardest is that despite all the efforts, all the commitments someone has made and is futile, nothing works. It can be so defeating and you can get to what you just called the fuck it mode and say, screw it, nothing's going to work and give up. And yet the people that I talk to are still resilient. There's still some glimmer of hope that something may work because living the way that they are is so uncomfortable that even though nothing has worked, they have all this evidence that shows them nothing they have tried has worked. They still have some kind of belief that there may be something out there. And this is truly how most people find me, right? They've tried a million other things. And I think that's part of it, sadly, is that experiment to know, okay, that doesn't work. And to find a path and carve something out that truly does work for your own, preferences, lifestyle, etc. And in my opinion, my hope for everyone really is finding something that's sustainable and not temporary because what that does, in particular as a nutritionist, right? I'm dealing with a lot of food. Food is the foundation. It goes much deeper than that, but food is truly the foundation. So when we're embarking and doing something temporary and then you give up and you revert back to old ways, then that
Mm,
feels like another failed attempt.
yeah.
So it's really to find something that is sustainable for life and your lifestyle and your preferences, right? So that you can commit and have something that, you know, you don't have to keep circling the same issues for years and for some people decades. Like just get that monkey off your back and yeah, so sustainable is I would say the thing to be in search of. Definitely.
I agree because I know I've tried a ton of things, that I can do them for a good 6 weeks, 12 weeks, and then
Mm,
I start falling off because for me, it's not sustainable for my life,
yeah.
you know? So I completely agree with you that doing something that is sustainable for you and your lifestyle is really where it's at. So I know like we
Yeah,
still
and
can,
if I just may add on to that, Sophia, I'm
sure,
sorry. I'm
you
so
know.
excited. Um, it speaks to a really important point, and much of the work that I do, and very early on in my career, I realized that, why people are coming to me, it's really not about the food at all. Like once what is supportive, and it's different for everyone, and we can talk about that, but um knowing what to do is not really the issue. It's about changing patterns and behaviors.
Mhm.
And this is such a big part of the work that I do. So very early on in my nutrition career, I realized, oh, this isn't about the food at all. It's about behavior and mindset, right? And yeah, lifestyle patterns. So I am an accredited life coach, but a lot of my work is behavior and mindset change. And how do we um, rewire some of the patterns and behaviors and thought processes that we can make something sustainable. So it really does go hand in hand with the nutrition because I can give probably a majority of the people a perfect nutrition plan specific to their body, their biochemistry, to balance their hormones, to balance their blood sugar, to burn fat, all of that. Easy, easy for me to do. Very scientific approach. But to follow it, that that is the work, right? That's the
Right.
work. But it has
Well,
to be sustainable. Back to your point. Totally.
so one of the things when we spoke about it before, you sent people for blood tests.
Yeah.
And I think now, and I completely agree because as a life coach, definitely I'm always talking about mindset and
Yeah.
behavior change, right? Because as you change your behavior and you step into new identities, and then you start integrating that new identity, then things really do start to shift.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes though, depending on your mind, because if you're one of those people who have a very analytical mind, you're always thinking about, well, why does this work?
Yeah.
Why should I
Yeah.
do that? So what's
Right.
the point? And if those are the type of questions that you ask. I think like doing a blood test and having it come back and you see what all your different markers are, what this and that is, and then you
Mhm.
say, okay,
Mhm.
what you need to do based on this.
Yeah.
So you have your science, then
Mhm.
then the mind gets something to do because
Right.
like, oh, okay, well, let's look at this. We'll work on this, and we'll absorb this stuff. Now your mind's happy because you got to analyze the whole everything. And I
Right.
think at that point, for some people, not everybody, because there are different quadrants. Some people are analytical, some people are promoters, some people controllers, all the things. But I think if you're analytical and or you're a controller, having the science to back it is really going to help because you know why you're doing what you're doing.
Exactly. Exactly. And to your point, like me going to nutrition school and understanding the fundamentals and the biomechanics behind how things work, it almost exactly to your point, like once we have this information, I found for myself personally, it was something, it's like a crime against my own wisdom once I knew better, right? Like, how do you, I mean, you can go against it, but you do it knowingly. But, if someone says to you, and I know the whole gluten thing for you. If someone says to you, just don't eat gluten, you're like, well, why? Until you actually can feel it or know. So that educational piece, I think, is a really big, yeah, support and helpful, at least for me with, and you're right on the nail, the analytical mind. Once I understood the mechanics of anatomy and biochemistry, yeah, very helpful to know why.
Yeah, and I know there's still so much more that I need to figure out, but I went and I did get my DNA done, so I got to see what different markers are in my DNA, and
Mm,
but also, I mean, I am a big believer in the biology of belief. I don't know if anybody knows Bruce Lipton, but anyway.
yes, of course. Yeah.
I do believe that just because it exists, it doesn't mean it has to prevail.
Agreed. It
And
doesn't pull the trigger. It does not pull the trigger, right? It may
yeah,
load the gun, but it doesn't pull the trigger. Yeah.
and even if the trigger is pulled, then I feel like I could be wrong, but if I choose to believe it, then my body will work with me. That you can do the matrix thing where you see you see, the trigger's been pulled, the bullet's coming, and you just
And
like
you can
just
move.
go back and let the bullet fly past you.
Totally.
So that you can actually reverse what's going on
Yeah.
with proper nutrition, and now with proper information, proper nutrition, and exercise, movement, whatever that
Yep.
looks like, play.
Lifestyle, patterns, behaviors, and thought processes, all of it can, yeah, totally.
So I mean, yes, I do
Mhm.
have some more digging to do, but my mind was already happy. It's like, oh, that's there. I was like, I didn't know that this could be part of your DNA. you know,
Interesting.
it's
Yeah.
just
It's
really
fantastic.
interesting and different things that for some people, like they get very passionate about things.
Hmm.
They're all in it and they're all excited. And for other people, it's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, that's interesting. That's so
Hmm.
cool. But that passion isn't there for them. But yet
Hmm.
that you can create it, but that's also like in your DNA,
Yeah.
whether or not, you have that level of passion or
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. Who knew?
Right,
That
right.
isn't actually in your DNA. Now, it doesn't mean that if it's not in your DNA that you can't be a successful entrepreneur, or that if it
Mm.
is in your DNA that you're going to be a
Yeah,
successful entrepreneur. But just knowing that that's a marker, it's like,
right.
oh, that was pretty cool. My mind
And
was
I
like
think
all over that. It's like, wow, I'll start seeing all the different things that are markers in your DNA. And obviously, I mean, I didn't get everything tested. The company I went to just, they do a subset of tests. And
right.
like any other company who wants repeat customers, if you want to know the other stuff, you pay more.
Of course. Yeah, yeah.
But
But
yeah,
fun to see, yeah.
it really
And,
is.
I think to your point, like, even though it's, the fabric of who you are, whether you choose to go down that road or not, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so
So,
you were asking me about the blood test. I don't know if we finished that kind of thought. Was there
well, yeah, tell us a little bit because, and I just jumped into my whole DNA thing, but because again, I find it very interesting, but let
It
us
is
know,
fascinating.
like, what kind of blood tests that you send people to do and how you help them to read it and all of that
Mm,
thing.
yeah. So the purpose of the blood test is actually for us to create for a specified and very customized nutrition plan. So it's a simple blood test. We look at about 36 different markers and they're all interconnected and interrelated regarding metabolic function. So it's a little bit more comprehensive than what typical physicians are looking at. We're looking at it very specifically for metabolic function and then how do we support it. So the plans that we create that I have created for my clients are not it's really fascinating, and this is a mind bender for a lot of people. It's got nothing to do with calories. It's got to do about the nutrients that are in specific foods or amino acids in different proteins and the unique um, composition of specific foods and how they're going to support a person's biochemistry and metabolism. So we look at very specific proteins, very specific vegetables and fruits that are the most supportive or would have the most added benefit or value to a person's body at this juncture in life, right? So we take into account, of course, health history, medications, and the blood test is really for the creation of the nutrition plan. And I guess just to reiterate again, it's got nothing to do with calories when we build it out. It's got to do about the nutrients in the specific foods that are most supportive. So basically, it's like, um, you know, you're eating the pharmacy, right? The pharmacy is the food. We It goes much deeper than just specifically the foods. What we're doing primarily with our plans are, and we don't talk about this a lot, people come with very specific issues that they want rectified, and they don't really sometimes care about the science. The ones that aren't analytical, some do love the science. Um, but really they want results, right? So what that does just on a high level is we're getting rid of inflammatory kind of contributing factors,
Mm,
but also healing the gut, and balancing hormones. So one of the key things that we do is regulate blood sugar. And blood sugar, as you may know, is the catalyst to insulin regulation. And insulin is the conductor for pretty much the whole hormonal cascade. So there's three things that are tied together, which is hormones, inflammation, and the gut or gut health and digestion. So what we know or what I've come to learn in my work in this field, if your gut is impaired, if your digestion is not optimal, you have inflammation.
mm,
When there's inflammation, your hormones, they're still communicating, but it's almost through swampy water with this inflammatory response. So there's like static on the line in terms of their communications. So the gut imbalance creates inflammation. Inflammation actually, it's so funny. The more inflammation we have, um, we tend so fat cells create more inflammation too. So it's this really interesting kind of little loop.
mm.
So uh, I'll just I'll start again. Gut impairment leads to inflammation. Inflammation messes up hormone communication. So those three things I call the tricky trio. They're all intertwined, and many people will come to me thinking, "Oh, I have a hormone issue," right? Because how they're feeling, in particularly in perimenopause or menopause. There is no menopause. Menopause is one day. We're just going to call it postmenopause because after you've had that one day celebration, we're in postmenopause. Um, so people will come, sometimes with hot flashes or, migraines, and they think, okay, they have a hormone problem, but what they really have is all three, right? If we have a hormone imbalance, we know that there's some inflammation. And so it doesn't matter where you enter into the loop, those three things always go together, the tricky trio. So I think of them like the three amigos, where there's one, there's three, all of them.
So with a lot of people talk about insulin resistance. So
Mm.
is do you end up with insulin resistance when you're um you have a lot of inflammation and you're not digesting well?
Yeah, that those are generally the catalysts. Yeah. So what happens on a very high level when we eat, and particularly carbohydrates or glucose containing foods, um, without getting too much into the weeds, let's just say when we eat, the food gets broken down into glucose, right? That glucose fuels our immediate needs for energy. What isn't being used immediately for fuel gets stored in primarily the first storage locker. The two storage lockers are your muscles and your liver. Both of those have very small storage capacities, and particularly us as females in midlife, we tend to lose muscle mass after the age of 30 if we're not actively building it. So for women, like in comparison to men, we have smaller storage lockers in our muscles. But either way, both those storage lockers are pretty small, the muscles and the liver.
Mhm.
And then all the excess that's not being used immediately gets stored as fat. So it's insulin's job to come around when so after we've eaten something that contains glucose, it's insulin's job. Insulin is released to kind of clear up the streets of all the glucose that's in the bloodstream.
Mm,
So on average, we have like 1 teaspoon of sugar or glucose in our blood at any given time. So when we eat things that are high carbohydrate or highly refined or turned quickly into sugar, just imagine, a chocolate cake, eating a big piece of chocolate cake. Like how much glucose um, is that converted to in your bloodstream? If we're only having 1 teaspoon generally in our blood at any given time, it's quite a lot. It can be up to like 8 teaspoons or tablespoons even in some cases. So insulin's job is to come and kind of clean up the streets and then take care of that extra sugar or glucose, right? So liver and muscles, and then the rest gets stored as fat. So insulin becomes insulin resistant when it is we have so much demand for insulin, and this um, this kind of extra exertion now is it's been knocked on so many times for insulin to be like the rescuer. The um the way that so how insulin works, it's almost like a little key that goes into a cell to open up the door to allow glucose to get in, right?
mhm.
So when we have insulin resistance, it's like someone's knocking on the door, but nobody's answering the door. So the glucose can't get into the cells. So this is how we become insulin resistant. I don't, that was a really long way to me answer that question. Did that answer it?
Well, okay, here's kind of what I heard.
Okay.
Insulin has a job. The
Yes.
job is to sweep the glucose out. But
Right.
if you keep putting too much glucose in, insulin says, I'm tired and I'm not coming to work today because I am really resistant to doing this. So I'm not going to do it anymore. So
Yes.
then, so then eh, you get, the storage of fat, you get the fatty liver,
Yeah.
and because you don't have a ton of muscles, there's not a lot of places to store it, and insulin just went on strike.
Right. And for fun, this is a really interesting point. We don't as time goes on, and if we have more body fat, it's not that we have more fat cells per se. What happens is our fat cells just get bigger. So we don't increase in number, they just increase in size.
Mm,
Right? So insulin, the way that I consider insulin is a fat storage hormone. Even though yes, its primary job is to deal with glucose, but it's just making sure it's like the traffic controller, right? It's got all this sugar to deal with and it's like, where are you going to go? Oh, you're not needed over here, not needed over here. We're going to store you for later, but you keep eating, so we never get to get out of the storage locker out of the fat. So it really is a fat storage hormone. Interesting.
wow. See, and I never, I mean, heard it all different ways, but never kind of related it that way.
I like your analogy. I'm just not coming to work today. I'm tapped out. I'm
So
out.
it's like I'm burned out. I'm going on sprint.
You're asking me to do too much. I can't do it. Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
But I mean, when you really stop and think about it, how many women have you worked with who said that? It's like I'm burned out.
Right?
I am ready to tap out right now because they're
Totally.
asking me to do too much. Like I'm
Yeah.
doing the job of like three people right now because I don't want to hire anybody.
Right.
So it's like your insulin is like saying the same thing.
You
It's
know,
your if your body were corporate, it's like I'm doing the job of three people and I'm burnt out now.
I'm out, man. I can't take any more. Yeah. And it's so interesting. And on that line, I think it's helpful for women if this is who's listening to our conversation. Hello there, if you're listening. Um, the other thing that happens um as we enter into midlife, our amount, like our adrenals are, as you may know, are responsible for helping us produce cortisol and manage stress, right?
Mm,
So, what happens when we live chronically stressful lives that just become our norm? There's a lot of work that is being asked of our adrenals to perform, right? Producing this high levels of stress hormones all the time, and just managing life. But when we enter into midlife, the role of our ovaries, as they retire, their job gets passed on to the adrenal glands.
mm,
Isn't that fun? Right? So, ovaries are, there's estrogen production and a whole other bunch of functions, but their work is now passed on to our adrenal glands. And this is why some women feel the impacts of perimenopause and menopause so much more deeply, right?
mm.
Because all that extra work now pushed onto the adrenals, who are the workers that are overworked already. It was like, I'm tapped out, man. You're asking me to do more? Are you kidding me? I can't. I can't keep up. I can't keep up doing what I'm doing. Now you want me to do another job. So
Right.
it's really interesting, right? At this juncture of this intersection of midlife, all of these things are happening at the same time, plus so much more as our hormones change. But just in relation to what you were saying about the worker that's overworked, our adrenals are part of that.
Which I get now makes sense why a lot of people have adrenal fatigue because
Yeah.
the adrenals are now saying, "Hey, you're giving me the job of two other functioning organs, and you
Yeah.
want me to do what?"
Yeah, I've already been working 24 hours a day, and now I got nothing left to give you. Yeah, it's exactly what happens.
So, from a and I don't know if you can answer this because it's a generic question, but may not be a generic answer. For people who are suffering with adrenal fatigue and insulin resistance, what are maybe some tips that they can start with so that, you know, insulin comes off strike, adrenals
Yeah,
get back online?
yeah. I think it's a really valid question and perhaps not so black and white, but there are so many contributing factors. Um, and I would say, it's taken probably a few decades to get to that level of, yeah, I would say burnout or exhaustion or whatever stage you would be at. It's not a quick fix. It's not like one magic bullet, just do this one thing. There are many small things that can contribute. So when we think about one of the, to be alive and a human, we're dealing with stress every day, right? Like none of us are getting out of here without being stressed. And interestingly, I said earlier how adaptable we are. Like we forget that a stress can be sitting in a warm home and stepping outside into a North American winter in the cold, right? At whatever, 0 degrees or minus 20 degrees or whatever it is. Like that's a stress on the system, right? It's a good stress. Your body knows how to rebalance and recalibrate itself. Um, but the more that we can reduce the amount of stressors would be the most ideal. And that comes from not just, psychological and emotional stress, but also physical stressors. And one of the key ways that I would be remiss if I didn't talk about as a nutritionist is to help balance blood sugar and keep insulin levels stable.
Mm,
And what that really comes down to is 3 meals a day that are balanced with protein, fats, and carbs at every meal. My approach, what I found to be very effective is 3 meals with no snacking in between and no fasting. And the no fasting is actually because most of the women that I deal with are in this exact same position.
mm,
Burnt out, stress, nervous system is dysregulated. So going long periods of time without food, and then if we comprehend that or make that um even more exaggerated, working out on an empty stomach, right?
mm,
Because they feel like they need to lose weight. We're just adding more stress. So 3 meals a day, balanced protein, fats, and carbs, 5-ish, 4 to 5 hours apart with the meals and no snacking in between. Being hydrated, I know it sounds so basic and so simple, but basic hydration, right? If we're dehydrated, the body has to work so much harder.
mm.
Um, and it creates another stress. So when we can think about all the little tiny things that can contribute to our nervous system feeling a little bit more regulated, starting with food and what we're putting in, obviously, taking out things that may be causing inflammation or gut dysbiosis or trouble with our digestion.
Mhm.
Those are all really key components, I would say foundational. But I'm sure this is what everyone's heard before, and perhaps the knowledge isn't the problem. It might be, I don't know. But it may be the execution of the knowledge. Like, yeah, 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 I know that. And I hear that all the time. Yeah, yeah, I know. But doing it, right? Doing it. That is our work. Knowing and embodying something very different. But sleep, you know, re, you know, aiming for quality, consistent sleep, regular wake times, bed times, and how we can support our own internal clocks, our circadian clocks, is cutting out screens at night. A couple hours before bed would be most ideal. Getting exposure to morning sun as soon as we wake up, sunlight in our eyes, it's triggering our own. What it does, first of all, is it gets our cortisol levels to come up first thing in the morning when we need to kind of get going and get moving. And then as soon as sunlight hits our eyes, it's also triggering our own internal clock for when melatonin, our sleep hormone, is going to kick into gear and help regulate. So, those kind of basic foundations of anything we can do to mitigate the amount of stress that our body is under, our nervous system deals with. And I mean, there's so much more, right? When we talk about interpersonal relationships, also how we talk to ourselves. Like these are all little things, but from a nutritionist, I would say those are the foundational kind of lifestyle body supporting mechanisms that we can do to control or at least mitigate the amount of stress that we have to endure. Does
And
that?
some of what you said, well, all of what you said is really interesting, but like I've heard several different people talk about intermittent fasting for women. And
Mm,
you, on the other hand, would say, no, don't do that because your body needs food. So eat
mhm,
3 good meals a day.
yeah,
So I find that interesting because, of course, it's a direct contradiction to
yeah,
what certain doctors are out there saying.
yeah,
So I think, and I really do think that's part of where some of the issue lies. It's like, who do
mhm,
I listen to? It's like, yes, I want to
yeah,
listen to my body, but if this expert is saying do intermittent fasting And this expert is saying, no, eat 3 solid meals a day and don't snack. Who do I listen to? Because how do I know which one's going to work with my body better? And even taking that another step further is talking about being gluten free, because some
Mhm,
people, they don't have celiac, but they are sensitive to gluten because,
mhm.
well, at least gluten in the North Americas, because we have Frankenwheat.
Yep.
At least that's what I call
Exactly. Yep.
it.
That's it. That's what we call it too.
Other countries don't have Frankenwheat. They
Yeah.
have like literal wheat that goes back to ancient times, and they haven't
Mhm.
messed with it. So
Yeah,
some
denatured it.
people talk about, yeah, I can travel and eat
Mhm.
all the things that I can't eat at home. And
Yeah,
the dirt's different, the wheat's different, all the things are different.
yeah.
So that plays a part. So when
Mhm.
you're getting all this conflicting information, it's really
Yeah.
hard to make a decision.
Sophia, I totally agree, and I just wanna kind of reflect back to what you said. I think you have the answer, and if everybody could listen to this. You said, "This expert is saying this, and I'm conflicted, and if I just asked my body." And what if we did that? What if we just shut out everything around us and just really tuned in and asked ourselves and asked our body truly? What ends up happening, I think, in the work that I do anyhow, is we tend to answer questions cognitively with our mind and not with our body, right? We're
Mm,
not listening to our actual body. We're so disconnected in so many ways, distractions, external world, that we don't really have a conversation with our body. And a lot of the work that I do is to, I'm sorry if you can hear my dog nesting. She's scratching the carpet trying to nest. I'm so sorry if you can hear that. Um, just know she's a cute little white purse dog trying to nest on my shaggy carpet. Um, Coming back to like the body is always communicating with us using symptoms, right? Always. Our body doesn't use words, it uses symptoms. So the hot flashes, the headaches, the inflammation, the gut pain, the gas, the bloating, that all of it, all of those things, headaches. It's all a conversation with your body trying to get your attention, right? Our job is really to one, hear it, listen to it, and then two, to code what the heck is it saying, right? So we tend to outsource our own intelligence and our own resources and knowledge based on what's everybody else doing, what do they say, and overriding what we actually may think. So I just want to echo what you said. Like, if we could really tune in and have a conversation and listen to our own bodies, it knows. It knows. It's trying to tell us all the time. It tells us very subtly sometimes really loudly, but
right?
if we just pay attention, that is the true answer. That's the true answer. So I think, in there you had a question about gluten. Is that right? There was a question about gluten in there?
Well, a question, sort of, but I think I made more of a statement about,
Okay.
some people just being more sensitive to gluten than
Mhm.
others. And it's kind of just by virtue of the fact that a lot of the food that we're eating is not pure, anyways. Um,
Yeah. Well, there's that. There is that.
but there's a whole,
Definitely.
I think that's a whole other conversation for another day. So
Yeah.
maybe we
Agreed.
don't touch on that now.
Agreed.
One of the things I was thinking though, if you do gluten-free meals, um, or if, based on somebody's blood test comes back and says, hey, you know what, you probably shouldn't be eating wheat or things that contain gluten, because lots of things that are not wheat do contain gluten, like some
Mhm.
oats contain gluten,
Yeah.
rye has gluten. Like there's a lot of stuff that has gluten, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of food that has wheat in it that you wouldn't
Mhm.
think about.
Yeah.
So I know, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that you tell people, read the labels of whatever you're
Okay,
gonna
this is
buy.
this is this is a great conversation. The co okay. So my ideal scenario would be for every single one of my clients to never read a label ever. Period. Mic drop. Right there. Just don't read a label. And the reason If you're buying whole foods in their natural state, there are no labels.
True.
It's gonna tell you where it's from, if it's organic, that's it, right? You go buy a piece of steak, a piece of chicken, an apple, some broccoli, right? You just there's nothing. An apple's an apple, broccoli's broccoli, that's it, right? So you never have to eat or read labels with my approach. And I know that sounds kind of perhaps counterintuitive and also perhaps with the fasting aspect, but from a gluten perspective, I do wholeheartedly believe we should be able to, as humans, ingest small amounts of things in moderation that aren't toxic and aren't going to kill us without any ramifications, right?
Mm,
The problem is, you're right. Our wheat in North America is not wheat. It's been engineered to withstand droughts and different chemicals and to grow in very tough conditions. So it makes our our digestive system, very compromised to be able to digest it because it doesn't recognize it as a whole food, right? So that does create inflammation. But if we were just eating that kind of Frankenwheat periodically, we're probably not going to have an issue, right? But it's the amount and the sheer volume that we're subjected to,
mhm,
right? So if someone is struggling with gluten, um, for sure they have inflammation. For sure they have some gut issues. And if anything, if what I say is true, then we know we probably have some hormonal issues and all intertwined in there, right? Because of the inflammation, the gut issues. So, my approach specifically is not to have things that are gluten-free in the sense of a replacement, because a lot of the gluten-free products that are out there, as you know, have been processed. They
yeah.
have fillers. They also are very irritable to our digestive tract. And it's not really solving the blood sugar issue, right? The glucose thing. It's not.
Mm,
So my approach for things that have gluten, some people will have oats recommended on their nutrition plan. Um, and most people, unless they have like, some severe gluten or celiac, are they can actually tolerate a real whole grain sourdough rye. And the reason is rye does have a little bit of gluten, as you know, but it's not denatured. It's the full grain.
mm,
So most people that are gluten kind of sensitive can digest and process the sourdough rye. But when I say rye, the rye that I recommend is like European style. You pick up a loaf in the deli. It's a brick. It's so heavy, really, really thinly sliced.
mhm,
So rye that we get in North American bakeries, if you can squeeze it, it's got wheat in it. That's not what
mhm.
you want. You don't want that kind of rye. So straight up sourdough, old whole grain rye is usually pretty tolerable for most people.
Wow. Okay. See,
Mhm.
I learned that. I had no idea. So now, if people want to find you, how can they find you if they want to work with you and or have more conversation around their health?
Yeah, I do have I do have social media accounts. I don't hang out there very often, intentionally anymore. But you could find me on Instagram as nutritionist_Sharlene Styles, Charlene with an S. I also do have a website that's probably an easy place to find me, Pure, Pure, naturalhealth.ca. I'm in Canada. I can also leave you perhaps, Sophia, my YouTube channel. There's some videos on there, some informational videos. So I would say probably the most direct way would be my website. It's probably got the most amount of resources and some fun recipes and blog posts, etc. Yeah, I would say
Okay.
that.
Well,
And actually, on my website, you can find a free meal plan, a 5-day, sorry, it's a 7-day meal plan. I think it's on there now. A 7-day meal plan if you wanted to, know where to start and how to balance blood sugar and hormones.
oh,
It's
I
a
love
great place to
that.
start. Thank you.
Yeah, sometimes it's it's the meal planning and prepping that think. Well, okay, not speaking for anybody else. Speaking for me. Sometimes it's the meal planning and prepping that is my downfall because I think I know what I want, and sometimes I even buy the stuff, but because I don't
Mhm.
prep it, it's not available to me when I'm hungry.
Yeah, and
So I
that's
made
the
something
worst.
different.
Yeah, and to cook when you're hungry, like, I love to cook, but to cook when you're hungry, I don't wanna be in my kitchen all the time either. And, Sophia, it's interesting, it's probably the most common, obstacle for most people that I work with is, yeah, knowing what to do, but then the execution of actually doing it, and this is just a little fun tip, I don't know if anyone wants to give this a go. But one of the ways that we can kind of make this commitment using our executive brain is like pre-planning. So if you pre-plan the day before what you're going to eat the next day,
Mhm.
um, that's really helpful. So you're using your executive, rational prefrontal cortex of your brain versus the, limbic part of our brain, of survival brain that just wants immediate pleasure and gratification and use the least amount of energy.
Right?
Planning in advance is really helpful, but then the job is following through on what you promised yourself you're gonna do, right? If I'm gonna have yogurt and berries for breakfast, then you wanna keep that word to yourself and have yogurt and berries for breakfast, and then lunch and dinner. Right.
Well, it has been such a pleasure speaking to you, and this conversation could go in so many different directions, but in the interest
Agreed.
of time, we'll have to do this again
I
and
would love to.
continue the conversation and take it in a different direction. But for now, everybody knows where they can find you on your website and get that 7-day meal plan. I think that's important. I'm going to go look for it myself. And it's just been a pleasure
Fantastic.
having you here.
Thank you, Sophia, for the invitation. It's really great to be here, and I'd be happy to come back when the time's right.
Okay, perfect.